She tried to kill my son, with a smile on her face. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just poison in a cup. It was war. She waited until everyone clapped, then slipped black powder into Ethan's orange juice like it was routine. But worse? Hours later, Child Services showed up, with her name on the report. She hadn't just tried to hurt him physically. She'd weaponized the system against me. She thought I'd break, but what she didn't know was I'd caught it all on camera, and now I'm going to use her own tricks to bury her. Key footage is backed up, evidence labeled, time's ticking. She made one mistake. She taught me how to fight. My name is Michael Carter, and I'm 45 years old. Every evening after work, I tend to our modest suburban home while my 10-year-old son Ethan does homework at the kitchen table and my wife Sarah prepares dinner. The fresh-cut grass and birthday cake frosting fill our backyard today, where my mother Eleanor circles like a hawk among the party decorations. She smiles and waves to other parents, but I catch the familiar chill in her voice when she comments on my simple lifestyle choices. Most folks wouldn't notice the security cameras I've installed or the careful records I keep, tracking every strange comment and calculated slight. My late father taught me to trust my gut, and something about Eleanor's presence today sets off every alarm I have. But let me start from the beginning. I'd been setting up the last of the party games when the first notes of Happy Birthday caught me off guard. Kids and parents clustered around our patio table where Ethan sat beaming at his soccer-themed cake. 10 blue candles flickered in the late afternoon breeze, casting dancing shadows across his face. You know that moment when you're watching your kid and suddenly see them growing up right before your eyes? That was my Ethan, practically glowing with excitement. He reached for his cup of orange juice, his favorite since he could hold a sippy cup, and that's when I saw it. My mother Eleanor, standing just behind him, tilted what looked like a tiny glass vial over a second paper cup. Something black and grainy sprinkled out, clumping as it hit the juice. My gut clenched so hard I nearly doubled over. The party balloons scratched against our wooden pergola, making this weird squeaking sound that matched the buzzing in my ears. I forced myself to move casual, like I was just being the helpful dad, and reached across the table. "Here, buddy, let me get you a fresh cup. This one's been sitting out too long." I switched his untouched drink with a clean one from the far end of the table, palming the tainted cup under a napkin. My hands wanted to shake, but I'd learned long ago how to keep them steady when I needed to. "Dad, come on. I want to blow out my candles." Ethan tugged at my sleeve, and I made myself smile. The camera clicked and flashed while he made his wish, while everyone clapped, while my mother's eyes never left me. Not once. For the next hour, I kept Ethan moving between activities. Soccer ball shooting contest, piñata, present opening, anything to keep him away from that drink table. Each minute felt like an hour, my neck muscles getting tighter and tighter while I watched Eleanor chat with other parents, laugh at their jokes, act like someone's sweet grandmother. "Need help cleaning up?" She appeared at my elbow as I gathered paper plates, humming some old tune like she used to when I was small. I mumbled something about checking on Ethan and slipped into the kitchen, where I carefully labeled the suspicious cup with date and time, sealed it in a zipper bag, and tucked it away in my home office. You ever try acting normal when your whole world's just tilted sideways? I read Ethan his bedtime stories extra loud that night, hoping he wouldn't notice how my voice kept catching. Sarah had taken some leftovers to her sister's house, so it was just me and my boy, safe in his bedroom with his favorite dinosaur nightlight throwing orange shadows on the wall. "One more story, Dad? Please?" "Not tonight, champ. Big day tomorrow. You've got soccer practice early." I tucked the blanket around his shoulders, breathing in that mix of birthday cake and the new shampoo he'd insisted on buying because it smelled like watermelon. Once he was asleep, I knew what I had to do. The security camera above our patio had a clear view of the drink table. I'd installed it myself last spring, after someone had been stealing our Amazon packages. Never thought I'd be using it to investigate my own mother. My office felt too quiet as I pulled up the footage from earlier. The screen glowed blue in the darkness, and I couldn't help remembering how many times Eleanor had criticized my paranoid security system. "A home should feel like a home," she'd say, "not a prison." Now I wondered if she'd been trying to talk me out of it all along. I forced myself to sit down at my desk, the sealed cup beside my keyboard like a ticking bomb. Whatever that footage showed, whatever my mother had tried to do, I needed to know the truth, even if it shattered everything I thought I knew about family. The house settled into that special kind of quiet you only get after a kid's birthday party. Like the walls themselves were tired from holding in all that excitement. I clicked through the security footage, watching reversed balloons dance backward across my screen until I found the right timestamp. You know that feeling when you're about to confirm something terrible? Your finger hovers over the play button, and part of you wants to just shut it all down. Pretend you never saw anything? Yeah, that's where I was. The footage started rolling at normal speed. There was Ethan, surrounded by his friends, all of them doing that awkward birthday party shuffle kids do when they're waiting for cake. Eleanor moved into frame, and I leaned closer, my office chair creaking under the shift in weight. The image was crystal clear, one of the reasons I'd splurged on the higher-end system. Every detail stood out in sharp contrast. Her hand appeared above Ethan's cup, and I hit pause. The frame froze on that moment, and my stomach turned to concrete. There was no mistaking what I was seeing. The small vial tilted just so. Her expression, God, her expression, blank, calculated, like she was measuring ingredients for a recipe, not potentially poisoning her grandson. I played it again, and again, looking for any sign that this was some horrible mistake, but there wasn't any hesitation in her movements, no moment of confusion or regret, just that same mechanical precision I remembered from childhood, when she'd measure out punishments with the same detached efficiency. My neck flushed hot, and I had to stand up, had to move. The room felt too small suddenly, like the walls were closing in. I practiced what I'd say, keeping my voice level. Mother, we need to talk about what happened today. Simple. Direct. No emotion to give her ammunition. I found her in the dining room, sitting in the dark like she'd been waiting for me. Only the security light from the backyard filtered through the windows, casting everything in shadows. My hands were steady as I placed the sealed cup on the table between us. Care to explain this? I kept my voice quiet, conscious of Ethan sleeping upstairs. She laughed, actually laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. Oh, Michael, she said, like I was still 10 years old and asking why I couldn't go to a friend's house. A little scare might make you grateful again. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and something in my spine turned to ice. Grateful? For what? Trying to poison your own grandson? Dramatic as always. She stood up, patted my cheek with cold fingers. You've forgotten who you are. Who made you? Sometimes children need reminding about respect. I pulled back from her touch, bile rising in my throat. Get out, I whispered. Get out of my house. Sleep well, dear. She gathered her purse, still wearing that empty smile. Give Ethan a kiss for me. The front door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there in the dark, trembling with rage and fear, and something else I couldn't name. My feet carried me upstairs to Ethan's room before I even realized I was moving. His nightlight cast dinosaur shadows on the wall, and his breathing was deep and even. I watched his chest rise and fall, making sure he was really okay, really safe. I won't let her hurt you, I whispered. I promise. Back in my office, I sealed the security footage on a separate hard drive and tucked it into the safe along with the cup. On a piece of masking tape, I wrote the date and time with hands that finally allowed themselves to shake. The evidence felt like a live wire, dangerous to hold but even more dangerous to let go. I'd keep this quiet for now, I decided. Document everything, build a case, but wait for the right moment. Eleanor had taught me that much at least. Timing was everything. The alarm clock read 3:17 a.m. when loud knocking jolted me awake. Someone was pounding on my front door. The pounding at my door wasn't letting up. I checked my phone. 7:15 a.m. Too early for sales calls, too late for emergencies. You know that feeling when you already know something's wrong, but your brain's still catching up? Yeah, that's where I was. I threw on a robe and headed downstairs, catching a glimpse through the side window. 2 women in business casual, clutching clipboards. Behind them, parked across the street, sat my mother's silver sedan. My stomach dropped, but I forced my face neutral. Mr. Carter? The taller woman held up an ID badge. I'm Sandra Mills from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, Rebecca Torres. We need to speak with you regarding your son, Ethan. I took a deep breath, counted to 3 in my head. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Please come in. They settled onto our living room couch while I offered coffee. Always good to seem hospitable when your world's about to tilt sideways. Through the window, I could see Mother in her car, pretending to check her phone. Real subtle, Eleanor. Dad? Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching his favorite T-Rex figure, the one we'd painted together last summer. Each scale a different shade of green. What's happening? These ladies just need to ask us some questions, buddy. Everything's fine. I gestured him down, keeping my voice steady. Why don't you show them your dinosaur collection while we talk? Sandra cleared her throat, flipping through papers. Mr. Carter, We've received some concerning reports about Ethan's home environment. We'll need to discuss your daily routines, meal plans, and educational support. For the next hour, I answered their questions while Ethan sat close to my side. Yes, he had regular mealtimes. No, he never missed school. Yes, I attended all his parent-teacher conferences. Here's his last report card. Here's our family calendar with his soccer practice schedule. Would you like to see his room? I led them upstairs where Ethan's space told its own story. Soccer jerseys folded on shelves, homework organized on his desk, the reading chart we'd made together pinned to his wall. His bed was unmade, because he's 10, and perfect isn't the point. Bathroom's through there, I offered. Kitchen's downstairs if you'd like to check our food situation. Rebecca made notes about the full fridge, the fruit bowl, the weekly menu posted on our whiteboard. I wanted to scream about the absurdity of it all, but I kept my voice level. Getting angry would only make me look unstable. Exactly what Mother wanted. Back in the living room, Sandra pulled out a formal notice. Mr. Carter, we're initiating a 30-day observation period. We'll need to verify continued stability in Ethan's home environment before we can close this case. My hands didn't shake as I took the papers, but it was close. And if you're not satisfied after 30 days, then we'll need to explore alternative guardianship options. She held my gaze. We take all reports of neglect seriously, Mr. Carter, even when they come from family members. There it was. The trap Eleanor had set, springing shut around us. Of course, I said, walking them to the door. We'll cooperate fully. Standing on my porch, Sandra paused. Mr. Carter, the reporter seemed particularly invested in this case. Just something to consider. I nodded, watching them leave. Across the street, Mother's car pulled, away from the curb, moving slow enough for me to catch her satisfied smile through the windshield. Back inside, I hugged Ethan tight. Hey buddy, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Dad needs to make some calls. Once he was upstairs, I went to my office safe. The sealed cup sat next to the hard drive. Evidence of one crime while Mother orchestrated another. Yesterday she'd tried to hurt my son directly. Today, she was using the system itself as a weapon. I stared at the social worker's card on my desk, their 30-day deadline hanging over me like a guillotine. Every hour mattered now. Every decision would be scrutinized. One misstep, and I could lose everything that mattered. Mother had just raised the stakes, turning our private war into a public battlefield. And she'd picked the perfect timing. Right when I had proof of her first attack, but couldn't use it without risking Ethan's stability in the process. The social worker's footsteps had barely faded when I dumped every file folder we owned onto the dining room table. Report cards, sports physicals, dental checkups. I sorted them by date while my hands kept busy and my mind raced. You ever notice how paperwork feels like armor when you're under siege? I just labeled the third manila folder when Ethan poked his head in. Dad, can I go ride bikes with Kevin? Not today, buddy. I hated the disappointment in his eyes, but Mother could be watching. How about we build that new Lego set instead? He shrugged and disappeared upstairs. The quiet felt heavier than usual, broken only by the scratch of my pen as I documented every achievement, every routine that proved we were stable, normal, safe. The knock at the back door nearly made me knock over my coffee. Carl stood there, baseball cap pulled low, arms crossed. My neighbor of 8 years looked more like his former detective self than the retired guy who usually borrowed my hedge trimmer. Mike, he said, eyeing the papers spread across my table. Saw something interesting last night. Your mother was out by your trash cans around midnight, digging through bags like she was looking for gold. My stomach dropped. Come in, Carl. Coffee's fresh. He settled into a kitchen chair, declined the mug I offered, and waited while I explained everything. The birthday party, the black powder, the morning's visit from child services. His expression darkened when I mentioned the 30-day deadline. Show me, he said. I brought out my laptop, played the security footage. Carl leaned forward, squinting at Mother's hand over the cup, her calculated movements. Freeze it there. He pointed to her face. That's intent. No hesitation, no uncertainty. She knew exactly what she was doing. He sat back. You seal the cup? Bagged and labeled with the time and date. Smart. But this is just the opening move, Mike. She's building a case, piece by piece. Those trash runs? She's hunting for anything she can twist. Receipt from a bar, late notice on a bill, medicine bottle. Doesn't matter if it's old or explainable. She just needs enough pieces to paint a picture. So what do? Carl pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Documentation wins wars. Every interaction, every drive-by, every word spoken, log it. Time, date, witnesses if you've got them. Keep copies everywhere. That footage? Back it up offline, store it somewhere safe. The cup? Photograph it, seal it again, note who handled it when. Chain of custody matters. He was right. Mother wasn't just attacking. She was building a narrative. I needed to build a stronger one. Get a dedicated notebook, Carl continued. Keep it by your front door. Every time she shows up, every time she calls, every time you see her car, write it down. Times, dates, duration. What she wore, what she said, which direction she drove off in. Details matter. I grabbed a legal pad and started making lists. Security camera backups, school attendance records, grocery receipts proving regular meals, a photo log of Ethan's room showing consistency. The powder in that cup, Carl said quietly. You planning to get it tested? I should, shouldn't I? But if I file a police report now, they'll have to involve child services. Could muddy your 30-day evaluation. He drummed his fingers on the table. Hold that card for now. Focus on proving stability first, but keep the evidence secure. Might need it later. We spent the next hour creating a battle plan. Chore charts on the fridge showing routine. A sign-in sheet for Ethan's homework help. Dates for upcoming parent-teacher conferences. Everything documented. Everything backed up. By evening, I had 3 copies of every important paper and a fresh SD card ready for the security cameras. Carl helped me install a motion-activated light over the trash area, just in case Mother went dumpster diving again. Remember, he said at the door, she's counting on you to react. Emotionally. Don't. Just document and wait. Evidence tells its own story. I stepped onto the porch for some air after he left, letting the summer evening calm my nerves. That's when I saw it. Mother's silver sedan creeping past, slow as a shark in shallow water. I counted to 10, went inside for the new SD card, and had just reached for it when the doorbell rang. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table before sunrise. 3 fresh notebooks, laid out like battle plans. Carl had texted at 5 a.m. Start everything today. No detail too small. You know that feeling when you realize the game you're playing has much higher stakes than you thought? That's how my coffee tasted. Bitter with purpose. I started with the cup, pulled it from the zipper bag using disposable gloves. Carl's idea. Photographed it from 12 angles under bright light. The black powder had settled into a nasty film. At the bottom, each photo got a timestamp, and I noted every step in the first notebook, the one labeled physical evidence. Think like you're building a wall, Carl had said. Every brick has to sit perfectly or the whole thing gets shaky. The security footage came next. 3 backup copies. 1 to a secured cloud account, 1 to an encrypted drive at Carl's place, and 1 in my new fire-safe box. You'd be surprised how heavy peace of mind can be when you lock it in a metal box. Around 8, Carl showed up with what looked like a hunter's trail camera. Motion activated, he said, mounting it high in the oak tree overlooking my trash bins. Infrared, time-stamped, weather-sealed. Used to catch poachers, now it'll catch something worse. You really think she'll keep digging through my trash? Carl's weathered face creased. People like your mother, they can't help themselves. Need for controls like a hunger. Keeps them coming back to feed. He was right. That very night, the camera caught her. 11:47 p.m. Silver sedan rolling up quiet as a ghost. Mother, in her gardening gloves and yoga pants, systematic in her scavenging. Each item she pulled got its own entry in Notebook 2. Surveillance log. Empty cereal box, I wrote. 3 yogurt containers, expired. Pizza delivery receipt, 2 weeks old. She worked for exactly 12 minutes, filling a canvas tote with my family's discarded mundane life. The timestamp glowed steady in the corner of each frame. The next day brought 3 texts and 1 voicemail. Each one dripped with concern that felt like acid. Just checking on Ethan's breakfast. Hope he's eating well. Does his teacher know about his late bedtime? Those soccer cleats looked awfully worn. Every message went into Notebook 3. Contact record. Time, date, exact wording. Carl taught me to note the pattern, how each message implied neglect without directly stating it. I kept my responses minimal, factual. Ethan's fine, thanks. School going great. All good here. Don't give her material to work with, Carl advised. Let her do all the talking. Every 3 days, I sent updates to child services. Professional, documented, emotion-free. Ethan's homework completed. Daily, see attached signed sheets. Regular meals maintained, grocery receipts included. Consistent bedtime routine, calendar attached. Mother's drive-bys increased. Morning, afternoon, evening. Her sedan became a silver shadow in our lives. Each pass got logged, time-stamped, noted. The camera above the trash caught her 4 more times that week. Each visit longer, more thorough. By day 7, exhaustion had settled into my bones like wet cement. Keeping 3 notebooks updated, downloading camera footage, scanning documents. It was a second full-time job. But then Carl called. "Check the overnight footage," he said. Got her. There she was, 1:23 a.m. The infrared caught her clear as day, plucking Ethan's latest progress report from the recycling bin. The one I'd deliberately placed on top, the one I'd already scanned and filed with Child Services. The camera captured her reading it by phone light, tucking it into her purse with a satisfied smile. I exported the clip, labeled it Pattern 011.mp4, and made the usual 3 backup copies. My hand shook slightly as I wrote the log entry. Not from fear, but from a strange kind of relief. Finally, proof of method. Not just madness. Carl came over to review the footage one more time. "This is good," he said, pausing on her face as she read the report. "Shows intent. Shows pattern. Shows she's not just concerned, she's hunting." The next afternoon, my phone buzzed with Child Services follow-up call. "Professional courtesy," they said. Just a routine check-in. I'd been expecting it, but my stomach still clenched like I'd swallowed ice. 30 minutes, Mr. Carter. Is that convenient?" "Of course." I kept my voice steady. "We'll be here." I found Ethan sprawled on the living room floor, homework spread around him like a paper moat. "Hey, buddy, want to help me straighten up? We've got visitors coming." He nodded, already gathering worksheets. "The clipboard people again?" Something in his tone made my chest ache. 10 years old shouldn't sound that worried. "Yeah, but it's okay. Just showing them what a great team we are." Carl arrived first, settling into the armchair with a newspaper. To anyone else, he looked like a neighbor dropping by, but I caught his quick scan of the room, the way he positioned himself with clear sight lines to both doors. "Remember," he murmured as I passed, "let them lead. Answer direct. Stay cool." The social workers, same team as before, arrived exactly on time. Ms. Jensen, the lead, carried her familiar clipboard. Her colleague, whose name I still couldn't remember, had a tablet this time. Everything started smooth. Ethan showed them his science project. I walked them through our weekly schedule posted on the fridge. The house was spotless. You know how it is when you're expecting company. Every room like a magazine photo. Then, Ms. Jensen cleared her throat. "Mr. Carter, we've received some concerning anonymous tips." My mouth went dry. "Oh?" "Reports of unsafe storage conditions. Cleaning supplies within reach. Medication improperly secured." She glanced at her notes. "And some mentions of erratic mood swings." I watched Ethan's face cloud over. His shoulders pulled in tight, like he was trying to disappear into his t-shirt. That's what did it. Seeing my boy shrink under the weight of these lies, something inside me cracked. For one horrible minute, I actually considered giving up. Maybe Mother was right. Maybe Ethan would be better off somewhere drama-free, somewhere these accusations couldn't touch him. The fight felt impossible, like trying to catch smoke. That's when I noticed Carl's hand on the coffee table, 2 fingers tapping. Steady, deliberate, like a metronome keeping time. Stay in rhythm, stay focused. I took a breath and reached for the binder we'd prepared. "I understand your concerns. Please let me show you our safety protocols." Page by page, I laid out our documented reality. Photos of the locked cleaning cabinet, medication logs, Ethan's chore chart with his proud check marks, daily routine timestamps, everything neat, organized, verifiable. "And here," I said, pulling out a stack of receipts, "are all Ethan's activities from the past month. Soccer practice, library visits, dentist checkup, each one signed and dated." Ms. Jensen studied each page carefully. Her colleague made notes on the tablet. The silence stretched like taffy. Finally, she looked up. "This is very thorough, Mr. Carter. I believe in keeping good records." She nodded, almost to herself. "We'll schedule one final evaluation before the 30-day mark, just to close things out properly." The evening air had cooled by the time they left. I locked the door and leaned against it, feeling like I'd run a marathon. My shirt was sticking to my back. Ethan appeared at my elbow. "Did I do okay, Dad?" I pulled him close. "You did great, buddy." "Perfect." My phone buzzed. Carl's text was brief. "There's something bigger. Meet in the garage." The garage door groaned shut behind us. That familiar mix of motor oil and laundry soap hit my nose. Funny how normal smells can backdrop the craziest moments of your life. Carl didn't waste time with small talk. He just swept some old newspapers off my workbench and started laying out photocopies, one after another, like dealing cards in a game I already knew I wouldn't like. "Take a look at this one first," he said, tapping a document with his knuckle. The paper was crisp, official-looking. My eyes caught Ethan's name right at the top, then froze on the words, "Amended Beneficiary Designation." Something cold slithered down my spine as I read further. There it was in black and white, my mother listed as primary beneficiary. "Where did you get this?" My voice sounded far away, even to myself. "Public records search. Started digging after I spotted that manila envelope in your mother's tote bag last night. This is tied to an old savings plan. One of those educational funds parents set up when kids are born." I leaned closer, studying the signature at the bottom. It looked like mine, but not quite. The loops were wrong, the pressure points off, and the dates. I squinted at them, memory clicking into place. "I was in Seattle that week," I said slowly. "Business trip. Never even went near a bank." "Exactly." Carl pulled out 3 more documents, arranging them in a row. "And here's where it gets interesting. Notice anything about these other signatures?" I did. Each one was a slightly different version of my name, like someone practicing, getting closer to the real thing. The room felt like it was tilting sideways. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This wasn't even about control. This was straight-up theft from Ethan's future, from every birthday check I'd ever deposited for him, from every overtime shift I'd worked to build something for my son. "Jesus," I whispered, gripping the workbench edge. "She's trying to steal his inheritance. Not just trying." Carl's voice was granite hard. "These amendments are already filed. They're active." 10 years of careful saving flashed through my mind. 10 birthdays worth of college fund deposits. All of it potentially redirected to a woman who'd tried to poison my kid at his own party. The rage that bubbled up was so hot it almost choked me. "Here's what we do," Carl said, pulling me back to focus. "First, we get your signature notarized. Multiple samples, different dates. Create a baseline. Then we document every piece of this. The trash raids, the envelope sightings, these forged papers. Everything gets labeled, dated, copied." I nodded, forcing myself to breathe slower. "Timeline?" "Exactly. We build it all backwards. Show how she accessed your mail when she could have gotten specimen signatures. Link it to her night visits to your trash bins. Make it impossible to explain away as coincidence." My hands were steady as I gathered the photocopies, muscle memory from years of keeping records kicking in. I pulled a fresh folder from my garage cabinet, the kind with metal fasteners inside. Written in clear block letters across the tab, I marked it, "Court." "One question," I said, carefully organizing each page in chronological order. "How fast can we move?" Carl checked his watch, already pulling out his phone. "I know a notary who owes me a favor. She'll meet us tonight if I call now. By morning we can have the first affidavits ready." I sealed the folder and locked it in my fireproof safe, right next to the hard drive with the security footage. The garage felt smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in with the weight of what we'd discovered. But for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something else too. The solid ground of hard evidence under my feet. "Make the call," I told Carl. "I'll get my passport and other ID ready. We're not letting her steal one more minute from my son's future." The final week hit like a freight train. Every morning started at 5 a.m. Carl and I hunched over my kitchen table with coffee going cold beside stacks of papers that grew taller by the hour. We moved like clockwork. Date, document, verify, file, rinse and repeat. You know that feeling when you're building something complicated, and suddenly all the pieces start clicking into place? That's how it felt watching our case file come together. Each entry was another brick in the wall between my mother and Ethan's future. "Timestamp everything," Carl reminded me, though I barely needed prompting anymore. Even if it seems minor, I'd gotten religious about documentation. Every security footage export came with digital checksums, those unique fingerprints that prove a file hasn't been tampered with. The index I printed could have made a librarian weep with joy. Cross-references, exhibit numbers, witness lists. "Your mother's been busy," Carl muttered one afternoon, adding another entry to his sworn declaration. 3 more trash pulls this week alone." I glanced at the footage timestamps. 2:17 a.m., 3:42 a.m., 1:55 a.m. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The videos showed her methodically sorting through my garbage like some deranged archaeologist, stuffing papers into that same manila envelope. "Got something better," I said, sliding over a fresh printout. Bank statements showing I was out of state when she forged those signatures. Notarized copies arrived this morning. Carl nodded approvingly. Beautiful. Clean timeline. Solid alibi. I fired off another update to Child Services. Professional. Detached. Every word chosen carefully. At the bottom, I added, "Please ensure all future communications are in writing for accurate record keeping." Let them read between those lines. That night, watching the clock tick closer to our 30-day deadline, something dark crept into my thoughts. Maybe peace meant letting her win. Maybe Ethan would be better off if I just... The memory of his birthday party hit me like a splash of cold water, the black powder in his drink. His innocent smile as he reached for that cup. "No," I said out loud to my empty kitchen. "Not happening." I pulled out the affidavits Carl and I had prepared. My signature looked clean and confident on each one. Nothing like those shaky forgeries my mother had crafted. The court filing was scheduled. All we needed was a date. Walking past Ethan's room that evening, I paused in the doorway. His nightlight cast a soft glow, like a distant star in the darkness. He slept peacefully, one arm wrapped around that dinosaur figure he loved so much. Looking at him there, all the exhaustion of the past weeks felt worth it. I slid down the hallway wall, our case binder heavy on my knees. Every page inside represented another layer of protection around my son. The medical report from that tainted drink. Security footage showing my mother's late-night raids. Bank records proving the forgeries couldn't have been mine. Carl's detailed witness statement about the trash pulls and those damn beneficiary forms. My phone buzzed, displaying a blocked number. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m., courthouse hours. My throat went dry as I answered. A clipped voice on the other end said just one word: tomorrow. I sat there in the dim hallway for a long moment after hanging up, listening to Ethan's steady breathing from his room. The binder on my lap held everything we needed to end this. Tomorrow, it would all come down to 12 pounds of paper and one mother's poisoned legacy. You ever notice how the hardest fights are the ones you never saw coming? When I installed those security cameras years ago, I never imagined they'd help me protect my son from his own grandmother. But here we were, and tomorrow would decide everything. I closed the binder, double-checked the seals on our evidence box, and forced myself to breathe. The nightlight in Ethan's room flickered gently, reminding me exactly why all this mattered. Ever notice how certain smells stick with you? Like that mix of stale coffee and wood polish you only get in old courthouses. It hit me the moment Carl and I walked through those heavy doors, bringing back memories of jury duty and traffic tickets. But this time, I wasn't here for any minor offense. "Ready?" Carl murmured as we found seats in the nearly empty courtroom. The early morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. I adjusted my tie for the 100th time. As I'll ever be. The door creaked behind us, and I didn't need to turn around to know my mother had arrived. Her perfume, that same cloying floral scent she'd worn to every family gathering, drifted forward like a warning. "All rise," the bailiff called out, and we stood as Judge Marshall entered. She had the kind of face that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Carter versus Carter," she announced, scanning the room. "I see the petitioner is representing himself?" "Yes, Your Honor." My voice came out steadier than I'd expected. Those hours practicing with Carl were paying off. "Very well. Opening statements?" I stood, feeling the weight of my mother's stare on my back. "Your Honor, I'd like to begin by presenting video evidence from my home security system, if permitted. It's brief but crucial to establishing the timeline of events." The judge gestured to proceed, and I handed the bailiff a labeled USB drive. The courtroom screen flickered to life, showing my backyard on that sunny afternoon. Kids running around with party hats, balloons swaying in the breeze, and there, my mother, clear as day, tilting that tiny vial over Ethan's drink. You could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom. The footage wasn't dramatic. No lightning strikes or ominous music. Just the quiet, deliberate movement of her hand and that black powder dissolving into orange juice meant for my 10-year-old son. Judge Marshall leaned forward, her reading glasses catching the light. "Time stamps on this footage?" "Yes, Your Honor. The system automatically embeds date and time. I can provide the raw files with metadata intact. And your storage protocols?" I'd prepared for this. "Original footage backs up to an encrypted hard drive, Your Honor. I maintain the master copy in a file safe with restricted access, along with all related documentation. Digital checksums verify file integrity." She made a note, then looked up sharply. "Do you have any corroborating evidence not sourced from your own security system?" That was Carl's cue. He stood, holding up a slim folder. Your Honor, I'm Carl Davidson, retired detective. I have dated photographs and a sworn declaration regarding related incidents I personally witnessed. The judge studied him for a moment, then nodded. We'll take 20 minutes while I review the authentication materials. Everyone remain available in the corridor. As we filed into the hallway, my mother brushed past me. She smelled of that perfume again, but now it reminded me of funeral homes. You'll thank me for this someday, she whispered, her lips barely moving. My stomach clenched, but I kept my face neutral. Carl's hand settled on my shoulder, a quiet reminder to stay focused. We found a bench away from the other waiting people, and I loosened my tie slightly. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, warming the marble floor, while my heart hammered against my chest like it was trying to escape. You know that feeling when you're so close to something important, but there's still room for it all to fall apart. That's what those 20 minutes felt like. Every time the courtroom door opened, my pulse jumped. Carl kept checking his watch, probably more out of habit than need. The footage speaks for itself, he said quietly, and my statement backs it up. We've got this. I watched a young clerk hurry past with an armload of files, her heels clicking on the marble. I hope you're right. The bailiff appeared in the doorway, and everyone in the hallway straightened up. Judge Marshall will resume in 2 minutes. I stood, straightening my tie one last time. Carl gathered his folder, and we walked back toward the courtroom doors. My mother was already there, her back straight as a ruler, that little smile still playing at the corners of her mouth. The bailiff's "all rise" brought us back to our feet. Judge Marshall settled into her chair, adjusted her glasses, and nodded toward Carl. Mr. Davidson, please take the stand. Carl moved with that measured pace ex-cops never quite lose, like he was still working a scene. The clerk swore him in, and he sat straight-backed, hands folded on his lap. Please state your credentials for the record, the judge directed. 28 years with Metro Police, Your Honor. Retired as Detective Sergeant in 2019. Currently licensed as a private investigator. And your connection to this case? I'm Mr. Carter's next-door neighbor. Over the past month, I've observed and documented several concerning incidents involving the respondent, Mrs. Carter Sr. The judge gestured for him to continue. Carl's voice stayed level, professional. The same tone he probably used for hundreds of depositions over his career. On multiple occasions, I witnessed Mrs. Carter removing items from Mr. Carter's trash containers late at night. She appeared to be selecting specific papers and documents, which she transferred to a canvas tote bag. I documented each incident with timestamps and photographs. You could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom. My mother's perfectly manicured nails dug into her armrest. And you maintained records of these observations? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. Carl nodded toward the declaration on her desk. Everything's detailed in my sworn statement. Dates, times, specific items when visible. I also noted the camera angles and lighting conditions for each observation. The judge made several notes, then looked up. Mr. Carter, you may now present the beneficiary designation documents. My hands were steady as I approached with the certified copies. Your Honor, these forms supposedly bear my signature, but I never signed them. The dates listed coincide with documented trash removals by my mother, and they conflict with my actual bank visit logs, which I've included. Judge Marshall examined the papers closely. How did these documents come to light? Carl cleared his throat. Your Honor, after observing Mrs. Carter Sr. with a distinctive envelope during one of her nighttime activities, I conducted a public records search. These forms had been recently filed. The court reporter's keys clattered like rain on a tin roof. I watched my mother's jaw tighten. That familiar tension I'd seen so many times when her control started slipping. Mr. Carter, the judge turned to me. What about your son's current welfare? Do we have any recent assessments from Child Services? Yes, Your Honor. I lifted the thick binder I'd been clutching like a life preserver. All their reports are here, including notes from their visits. We're scheduled for a final evaluation next week, still within their 30-day deadline. She accepted the binder, taking her time with each section. The courtroom stayed silent except for the soft whisper of turning pages and the muffled tick of the wall clock. Finally, Judge Marshall closed the binder and removed her glasses. The documentation appears thorough, but I'll withhold my findings until after closing arguments. She glanced at her watch. We'll take 15 minutes while I review the entire chain of evidence in chambers. The bailiff called break, and we all rose again. As everyone started shuffling out, I caught Carl's eye. He gave me that slight nod, the one that said we'd done everything we could. Now it was up to the judge. I loosened my tie and headed for the water fountain, my throat suddenly dry as sand. The marble corridor felt cooler now, almost chilly, but maybe that was just the adrenaline wearing off. You ever notice how time moves differently in moments like these? Those 15 minutes stretched out like taffy, each second taking its sweet time to tick by. I watched attorneys hurry past with their briefcases, courthouse regulars who probably saw drama like this every day. But this wasn't drama to me. This was my son's future, my family's safety, everything I'd built hanging by a thread. The bailiff appeared at the courtroom door right on schedule. Judge Marshall will resume in 2 minutes. We filed back into the courtroom like soldiers heading into that final battle. My tie felt too tight again, but I forced my hands to stay at my sides. Carl took his seat next to me, solid as always. The door to chambers opened, and Judge Marshall swept in, her black robe rustling. The bailiff called us to order one last time. You know those moments when the air itself seems to hold its breath? When even the dust motes floating in the sunbeams through those tall courthouse windows freeze in place. That's what it felt like as Judge Marshall settled into her chair and looked out at all of us. She adjusted her glasses, then asked the one question that cut straight to the heart of everything. What outcome protects Ethan without rewarding malice? My throat went dry, but I stood, shoulders squared. I'd rehearsed this a dozen times, in my head, but now the words had to matter more than ever. Your Honor, I began, keeping my voice steady. I'm not here seeking punishment. I'm asking for boundaries. Clear, legal boundaries that keep my son safe. I paused, making sure each word landed just right. The evidence shows a pattern of actions that put Ethan at risk, both physically and financially. What he needs is stability and security, not the constant threat of interference. The wooden benches behind me creaked as people shifted. Funny how those old courthouse benches sound just like the deck of a ship in rough waters. Maybe that's fitting. We were all navigating treacherous seas here. Judge Marshall's eyes moved to my mother, who sat staring at the table, her usual sharp posture slightly wilted. Then the judge turned her attention to the exhibits spread before her. The security footage stills, Carl's sworn statements, those damning forged documents. All of it laid out in chronological order. My hand drifted to my binder and found the corner where I'd tucked Ethan's school photo. His smile in that picture, so open, so trusting, hit me like a punch to the gut. Those sleepless nights came rushing back. The hours I'd spent watching that red camera light blink in the darkness, gathering proof while my son slept peacefully down the hall. I remembered the weight of that sealed cup in my hands, how the black powder had swirled in the orange juice like tiny storm clouds. The footage of my mother's blank expression as she poured it, frame by frame. Carl's steady presence as we built our case, piece by piece. Every single moment had led to this. Judge Marshall closed the file with a soft thump and placed both hands on top of it. I want to thank both parties for maintaining order throughout these proceedings and providing clear, well-organized submissions. The gallery behind me had gone completely still. Even the usual shuffle of papers had ceased. Through the tall windows, I could see clouds sliding past, casting shifting shadows across the courtroom floor. My pulse pounded in my ears as I waited for the words that would either save my family or tear it apart. The judge reached for her gavel, and I swear the sound of her fingers wrapping around the handle echoed like thunder in that silent room. Everything we'd documented, every piece of evidence we'd carefully preserved, it all came down to this moment. I clutched Ethan's photo through the binder cover, feeling the edges press into my palm. Here it was. The ruling that would draw the line between safety and danger, between protection and control. The gavel rose slowly, hanging in the air like a pendulum about to swing. My eyes darted to Carl, who gave me that slight nod again. The one that said we'd done everything humanly possible to protect what mattered most. Now we just had to trust in the system we'd fed with facts, footage, and sworn truth. The room held its collective breath as Judge Marshall opened her mouth to speak. In that frozen moment, I thought of Ethan at home, probably working on his math homework, blissfully unaware that his whole world balanced on the next few words about to fill this courtroom. The gavel came down with a crack that seemed to split the air itself. In the matter before this court, Judge Marshall began, her voice carrying that perfect mix of authority and certainty that makes your spine straighten automatically. I find clear and convincing evidence of malicious fraud and attempted custodial interference. My shoulders dropped an inch as the tension started bleeding out. Next to me, Carl gave another of his barely there nods. The documentation presented is thorough and properly authenticated, she continued. The security footage, supported by sworn testimony and physical evidence, establishes a pattern of deliberate actions designed to compromise parental authority and endanger a minor child. I heard my mother inhale sharply, but I kept my eyes forward. You know that moment when you're watching storm clouds break and the first ray of sunlight cuts through? That's exactly how it felt. This court hereby issues an immediate no-contact order barring the respondent from any interaction with the minor child, Ethan Carter. This includes direct contact, indirect contact through third parties, and any presence at school or extracurricular activities. The judge paused, shuffling papers, and I sensed the second hammer about to fall. Regarding the fraudulent beneficiary documents, she said, her tone sharpening. This court finds them void and without effect. The matter will be referred to the appropriate authorities for review of potential criminal charges. There it was. The complete dismantling of my mother's scheme, laid out in clean, precise legal language. I glanced over just once. She sat there, ramrod straight but somehow smaller, like someone had let the air out of her. The perfectly arranged woman who'd ruled my childhood through sharp words and sharper manipulations was watching her power crumble under the weight of simple truth. Mr. Carter, the judge addressed me directly. Your diligence in protecting your son while maintaining appropriate documentation is noted. Custody remains solely with you, without restriction. This court stands adjourned. The gavel fell one final time. No dramatics, no speeches, just facts leading to their natural conclusion. Carl gathered our papers while my mother's chair scraped back. I didn't turn to watch her leave. We walked out under those high courthouse windows, afternoon light streaming in like nature's spotlight. The weight of the papers in my hand felt just right. Not too heavy, not too light. Just the proper weight of justice, served clean and clear. Later that afternoon, I stood in our backyard with Ethan, both of us armed with shovels. The air was sweet with early spring, and the shadows were starting to stretch long across the grass. Right here? Ethan asked, marking a spot with his shoe. Perfect, I said. Remember what I told you about planting trees? He nodded seriously. Dig the hole twice as wide as the root ball, but not too deep. We worked together, carving out a neat circle of earth. The young orange tree sat ready in its nursery pot, leaves shivering slightly in the breeze, right where those birthday balloons had tangled just weeks ago. The soil was good and dark as we lowered the tree into its new home. Ethan packed dirt around the roots while I held it steady, making sure it stood straight and true. When we finished, I grabbed the watering can and let the water seep in slow and deep, just like my dad taught me years ago. Last thing, I said, pushing a small stake into this ground and securing the trunk with soft ties. Ethan helped me spread mulch in a perfect circle, and we both stepped back to admire our work. The setting sun caught the leaves just right, making them shine like new pennies. I put my hand on Ethan's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him there, safe and present and protected. You know, buddy, I said, choosing my words carefully, family loyalty isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn, day by day, by showing up and doing right by the people you love. The orange tree stood there, bright and promising, its leaves trembling in the faint breeze. A living reminder that good things can grow from hard choices.